the part 3 to this plan. And yeah, it would be recorded, so we'll always get an opportunity to come back to it or to put it forward to people who have questions later on about what it's all about, so they can get to hear what we've talked about and how we intend to solve these problems are. So basically, I mean, the part 2, we talk about the part that each state of the federation will be playing in regards to the different mix of power solution that we have. I mean, from our point of view, we have a thermal solution, which of course will include blast furnace. Hello, Yumi. How are you? We'll be using gas, which is something that will that we will do that will cover combined cycle turbine, which will be using gas as fuel, and of course the blast furnace, which will be using coal, and the rest of the raw materials that will be used, like limestone rather. So those are the possibilities that are open to us if we going to be using thermal source to generate electricity. Now, what we talked about is we'll be expecting something in the region of 50,000 megawatts of electricity, which will appropriate to about 50% of the total generation of electricity. Then we also talked about hydro source. We talked about the sources of the hydro, which of course includes Kanji and the rest of them. And then we also talk about Mambila project, which is expected to be delivered in 2027 with an expected generation of about 3,050 megawatts. This, of course, will bring us in total to around about 5,500 to 6,000 megawatts of hydro power electricity. This will be about 4% of the total generation. The total generation, which is of course 100,000 megawatts. So hydro will take about 4% of the total generation. And they would also talked about wind turbines, which is expected to be about 30% of the total generation, which is about 30,000 megawatts of electricity. And also the last renewable source, which is solar power. We expect something like 15,000 megawatts of electricity there, which will be about 16% of the total generation. So, I mean, those are the 4 different sources, major sources that we will be using to generate electricity. Of course, there are other ones as well that will be put in use when the actual work starts. There are other possibility of using biomass source, which is when we'll use agricultural product, um, especially the ones that will produce that are inflammable. It also would include using things that we're getting out of forest, like wood and waste, you know. And of course, there are so many things that can be used to fuel generation of electricity when it comes to biomass. There are wastes everywhere, like plastic waste and all sorts of things. Most of them are toxic, and they will be leaving a good hand of um, carbon emission. But a lot of them can also be cleaned up, or um, the waste that comes out when they actually burn to generate electricity can be cleaned up through recycling. So before they actually get into the atmosphere, so the carbon concentration and the methane concentration can be filtered out of them, so that their effect on human beings is not that catastrophic. So that's another way that we can use when we decided to use biomass as a source of generating electricity. So those are the way we plan to generate electricity. Um, Now, transmitting electricity, I mean, well, once that generated, um, the second part or the second phase of the process will include um, transmitting those generated electricity to be taken to different power stations, from where they will be then taken to um, the eventual users, which includes ordinary people and also business establishments and so on and so forth. So we'll be talking about transmission aspect as well as the distribution aspect. Those two aspects will be something that we talked about next time. In this phase, we will be talking about how each state will be equipped um, with the generation of electricity, taking into consideration each state's capability or resources or availability of uh, human knowledge, so they can really exploit the resources that they have to take advantage of using the best uh, generation source that will most suit them. So basically, it's trying to say that we'll try to utilize the source of the fuel that will be used in consideration to the state's location, and also in consideration with the resources available in the states, so that it will be easier to bring in resources, the raw materials, as well as finished product that will be used in electricity generation. Now, what I'm basically talking about there is, say, for example, we have um, um, iron ore, um, mostly in the middle belt, Specifically, for example, we'll say Lokoja, Kogi State. Now, if Kogi State is got a good source of providing us with metals, specifically steel, then we will look into how it will be easier for us to move those steel to the states that have, say, for example, wind uh, speed availability. So that's what's going to help us to determine, for example, how much wind turbines that state will be able to handle. So along the way, we'll talk about what we expect with each state, and then we'll also talk about the cost of generating um, electricity using different sources. So that will give an idea which is expensive to generate in relation to the state, which is cheaper to generate in relation to the state's location, as well as the resources that are available to those states. Now, there are 36 states in Nigeria, including the federal FTC, which makes it 37 altogether. So from our calculation, we look at it like states where they have metal as natural resources will be states that will have more power generation than states that do not have metals as natural resources. Now, the logic behind that is states with metal natural resources will require more energy for processing the raw materials, iron ore or bauxite or lead or copper or zinc. They require a lot of energy for melting, means for producing liquid metals, which is of course would then be would be transformed into solid metals, shaped and ready to be put into production. Now, the one metal that requires the highest amount of electricity for melting is bauxite. Now, bauxite is what's used in producing aluminium. Now, bauxite melter uses a combination of oxygen and electricity, which are arced. They're arced in a way that it produces so much power that it burns off carbon and oxygen out of bauxite, so that you have aluminium as residue, which are then scooped out and then allowed to solidify into good quality aluminium. So that's the basic way aluminium is produced. So doing these required lots of energy, right? So that's the reason why states that have bauxite as raw materials will be required to have higher electricity generation than other states who have no metal composites as raw materials. So bauxite requires a lot of energy for melting, and so is iron ore to make basic steel, which of course can be further pushed on to make different sorts of steel, hardened steel or soft steel, those kind of things. But fundamentally, it needs a lot of energy as well for its processing. So now, if we take that thinking into trying to figure out which states then would have um, higher electricity need so that they'll be able to process their natural or the resources. Now, Kogi State has the biggest deposits of iron ore. So we will expect Kogi State to have something in the region of 8,000 megawatts of electricity generation. Now, I think Kogi, in a way, has, despite the fact that they got iron ore as natural resources, which will, of course, enable us to give us the need to be able to generate lots of electricity. To produce steel. Kogi State also has a reasonable amount of wind. It had something like in the region of uh, 3 to 5 meter per speed of wind. So that makes it also a candidate for wind generation. So basically, that means that wind generation and thermal generation are a good prospect for Kogi State. Other states that have iron ore as as the natural resources will also be put close to having that amount of electricity generation, so something in the region of 5 to 6. All the states that come into that category will be states like Anambra, which has which has iron ore as well. We have states like Kwara, Benue, Bauchi. So those are the states that will be having a reasonable amount of generation derived from a combination of wind and thermal way of generating electricity. There are states like Ekiti that has considerable amount of bauxite. Those states will have something. Ekiti, for example, will have something like 4,000, right? Because it has bauxite. Ondo also has bauxite, so we'll expect Ondo to have something in the region of 4,000 as well. Anambra has bauxite and it has iron, so Anambra will get something in our calculation, something like 5,000 megawatts. Adamawa has bauxite, so that'd be 4,000 megawatts for Adamawa. So those are the big states that we have, well, that would need to have higher generation of electricity, because that's really based on the natural resources that they have, which are metal that will need to be melted down so they can be used to produce both steel and aluminium. Now, Kogi, of course, would have 8 megabytes, because there will be other steel processing plants that we will need to put in that state, based on the fact that they've got the highest concentration or highest deposit of iron ore. And of course, there will be a lot of structural, um, infrastructure that will be requiring vast amount usage of iron. So that's why that is vital. Now you go. So that means bauxite takes a huge amount, and iron ore, states takes a huge amount as well. Now you have states that produces things like lead, copper, zinc, manganese. Those states will we will expect to give something like 3,000 megawatts of electricity, because of course they have metals, but those metals are soft kind of metals, and they have a little lower melting point than bauxite and iron ore. So the amount of electricity that they would need for melting will not be comparable to when you're melting bauxite and iron ore. So in our calculation, we'll expect that they will have something like 3,000 megawatts of electricity for each one of those states. Now, those are the states that we have records for that have metal natural resources. The rest of the states in Nigeria have other natural resources, but not all of them have metal structural resources. So they would have 2,000 megawatts of electricity each, because we assume that they would need huge amount to process their natural resources. Of course, the industries and the rest of the economic activities that will be running in those states will require adequate generation distribution, so adequate generation transmission and distribution of electricity, and we'll calculate that with each state having at least 2,000 megawatts, they will be in a good place to be able to run through all of the activities that they will need during the first phase of our development. The only state that will have higher than 2,000 megawatts of electricity, which does not have natural resources that are metal related. It means this state doesn't have metal as natural resources, but it will enjoy a huge amount of power generation. This state is, of course, Lagos State. The reason we put into consideration to come into that conclusion is because of the economic activities that you have in Lagos State uh, and its environs. Lagos State is already developed as a city um, where industries are most developed in Nigeria. There are a lot of activities that are wrapped around those industries in Lagos State. But apart from that, it also has other industries that will be requiring huge amount of electricity usage. Industries like shipping industries and also the port in Lagos State. These economic activities require lots of electricity usage. So, and of course, you will expect these activities to increase over the years. Um, so there is that need for Lagos State to have huge amount of electricity generation. And another reason why there is a need for that is because of the population of Lagos State. It's the most populated of all the states in Nigeria. And of course, for that reason, you'd expect that the population will increase most probably at a higher rate than the rest of the country. So it needs to have that capacity to be able to yes supply adequate electricity for both the residential area, industrial area, and also for areas where there are development activities that are non-economic. So that's really the logic behind attributing the amount of electricity generation for each state. And what we've done is when all of these allocated um, power generation is added together, of course, we will arrive at 100,000 megawatts of electricity, which is where we're hoping to be regarding economic activities uh, in a country that's been industrialized like Nigeria after 4 years of industrialization. So that's how we plan to equip each state with adequate electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. Now, I've talked earlier on about um, the states that will be using thermal generation as the most energy generation source. We need to take a look at how wind turbines will work effectively in Nigeria so they can produce um, or they can efficiently produce power where they are located. Now, for in order to be able to allocate the right amount of wind energy to each state, we've looked at the map of Nigeria to see how much each state generates wind-wise, which part of the state, and how will it be easy for us to furnish those states or those locations with the tools that we need to use in generating electricity in those places. Now, I think it's a common knowledge that the northern part of the country has the highest wind generation in Nigeria. Uh, from um, from the record that we've been able to put together, the topmost part of the northern part of Nigeria is where the wind travels fastest most. Um, Kano State is known to be the states with the fastest wind blow. Kano has something in the region of 5.5 to about 6 minutes per second of wind. That's quite adequate because just to get a rotor to start rotating requires something in the region of about 3.2 meter per second wind. So that means that Kano is really suitable. We will be able to generate reasonable power from the wind turbines that will be installed in Kano. Kano. There are other states like Sokoto, um, Jigawa, Katsina, Samfara, um, Nasarawa. All these states have high wind in excess of 6 meter per second. So that means that there are good spots to put um, wind turbines so that they can generate enough electricity to take care of the state, and the excess can actually be put um, on the federal cabling system, uh, so the waste are put to use. The other states that have a little bit lower than the northern part are states like um, Lagos State, because of its proximity to the coast, and also Ogun State as well. They've got a reasonable wind blow there. They have average wind in the excess of 4 meter per second in those two states, which are, of course, southwest states. The rest of the southwest states do not have really good wind, but we can use vibrating wind turbines in those places if we do not use blade ones. They will still operate, it just they will not be operating at the utmost power in generating electricity. States like Osun, Ekiti, Ondo, and then we'll move down to the Delta states, going our way towards the south. But yeah, so the wind there is reasonable, but it's not the best. Now, the other part of the south have higher wind speed than what we have in the southwest. If we start talking about the south states like Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Cross Rivers, Abia, those states have excess wind, wind in excess of 4 meter per second. So they were qualified to be to be given an opportunity to generate that much power. Now, do you want to make a comment, Yemi, or should I carry on?
Yeah, carry on. Sorry, it's a network
Uh,
problem.
okay. Now, the so those states in the southwest have great capacity in the excess of 4 meter per second, and there are states as well in the southeast that have wind blowing in excess of 4 meter per second as well. States like Enugu, Anambra, Ebonyi, those states are bare. Those Imo, those states have good wind in the excess of 4 meter per second, but they're not superbly qualified for high high wind generation. But they are still usable, and yeah, they will be qualified in combination with thermal generation. Now, there are states in the northeast of Nigeria that have high wind generation. Borno is one of them. Um, but of course, you have states that kind of in the um, northeast and drafting towards the middle belt. States like Plateau, um, Adamawa, those states they have winds, but they're not the best of wind um, advantage. So they're not the best candidate for uh, wind turbines. But those states, they have one thing that's very usable there. They have already well-dredged waterways. These will help in being able to move um, resources there that are needed for generating thermal electricity. So that's one real good advantage they have. So conclusively, um, states that will enjoy the best of wind turbine generation as energy source will be the topmost part of the north, from round about the middle of it towards the west. So we'll be talking about states like Sokoto, um, Samfara, Katsina, Jigawa, Kano, Bauchi, Yobe, Plateau, Kaduna, Nasarawa. Those states we will just will have loads and loads of wind farms in those places, and we'll be able to generate as much as 30,000 in those places. Of course, the rest of the Nigeria it will be bonus. If we put into consideration that we have the southeast and the south with reasonable capability for wind generation, and we have the southwest, of course, with the lowest but still usable wind speed to generate electricity. So conclusively, what I think it'd be easy for us to conclude here is Nigeria in its totality have the capacity to generate um, adequate wind electricity generation according to our plan. It means 30,000 is doable. Now, the so that's really about wind turbines. The next in line would be solar power generation, which is another yeah, excellent way of generating electricity. Um, per unit of solar generates lower electricity than all of the other generation sources. But solar, it's quite a reliable way of generating electricity because the most important aspect of it, which is sunshine, is available in almost every part of Nigeria. So that makes each state a good candidate for generating electricity via solar power. So what this basically means that everywhere in Nigeria we can use solar power, uh, and we can generate solar power. The sun shines most in the north, from our calculation. So that means the northern part of Nigeria can afford to have as many solar energy generation as possible. Now, the southeast of Nigeria um, also has good sunshine per hour of the day, and that goes that same that same uh, benefit. It's also available in the southwest of Nigeria. Um, so everywhere in Nigeria has a good tendency to generate electricity using solar power. Now, what is the possibility of us of having the ability to generate or to produce as many solar panels that we would need? We talked about that a little bit, the second part, if I remember very well. The fact that if we look at the components that makes a solar panels that generates electricity, um, all of the components can be produced in Nigeria once we start with the industrialization of Nigeria. So that means that if we take a solar panel component apart, we will be able to generate every component apart from the solar cells, which we can import. And we've looked at the cost of solar cells, and we've seen that, okay, it would not add to the total production cost per solar panels produced. Now, the only thing that could be of considerable cost that will be added to the cost of solar panels will be its installation. Um, of course, that depends on where it's been installed. Our plan will be to use different way of installing solar panels, and also its localization. Now, just like what we would do with the windmills, where you will have farms, means like a whole bunch of wind turbines in one particular place, and they're all generating electricity. That is the kind of system that we used in solar power generation, where you will have a farm where there will be solar panels farm, just lots and lots of solar panels that have a good source to sunshine the longest part of the day. Um, the other way that we will also be using um, for installation of solar panels will be to have them installed on both moving structure and static structures. So we'll be looking at buildings, uh, poles, monuments, roofing, anywhere where there is a good fixed structure which has a well positioned to where sunshine is coming from. So we'll be using farms, both residential buildings, constructions, monuments, all structures, as well as uh, um, um, like bridges, flyovers, everywhere where we have static structure and it's exposed to sunshine becomes a candidate for installing solar panels. We will also use it on moving structures. And this will be like, say, maybe big vans that can hold a reasonable size plate of solar panels. So a lot of countries are doing this, so it's a possibility. So conclusively, we could see that with solar panels, there are different ways that it can be utilized, which include, of course, static position or moving position. And for the fact that we've got sunshine everywhere in Nigeria, that will give us an opportunity to be able to utilize that opportunity to the fullest. So that's the way we are looking at how to bring about all of the um, mix that we're looking into for generating electricity. Um, so that's basically how we plan to implement this phase of generation. So, do you have any comments, Yemi, so far?
Yeah. I think the explanation was quite okay, very great one. I quite appreciate the work you've done in trying to analyze the various ways, starting from the timer to the turbine and also hydro and the solar conclusive. So it's a great one where we follow it step by step, state by state analysis, and we could see that the possibility is there. Now, the the solution is even the most interesting part of it is that the solution is, you know, done having each state in mind and what capacity of electricity and their consumption could be like. You know, ever since we've not have a solution to Nigerian problem based on peculiarity. All we have is that if one is coming to the south, the other should be going to the north, which has not actually put into consideration, does this state actually need this or not? I think is a great one. I quite appreciate your explanation and the to a very great extent. It shows how real this can be done, and I appreciate that. It's a good one because most of the states in the north has the power to even go by solar or turbine. because they have the sunshine there. Even, for instance, in Lokoja, for instance, the place is very hot because of the rate of sunshine there too. So looking at states by their peculiarity is also very, very important. And when it comes to distribution too, I think there is another thing we need to look at is looking at the capacities, and there is no data on ground that we need to work with. So we also have to look at the data of how the consumption rates, so that we can actually, I know with time, with the way, economics and all that, the production aspect. So once we're able to get those statistics, so it will make the work more easier to be able to design or customize production or distribution based on the locality and their usage. So I quite appreciate your explanation, and it shows the level of knowledge that we try to bring into Nigeria, and for our people to understand and know. Then the other area I want us to also be looking at is the area of technical and vocational training. Most of those things are new, not new to other worlds, the advanced, but to Nigerians, they are new. We have shortage of knowledge in maintaining the already existing facilities. So we also will need to also look at that too. So, when we look at our educational system, has already been made in such a way that it is theoretical based, not practical based educational system. So that is why you look at it. Most of our graduates comes out and start looking at what next should I do, because the knowledge of being self-reliant, just as we have in each state today, most of the states cannot even stand on their feet, because they are all depend. We're trained from our educational system. We're trained to be dependent, on people. We are not trained to be independent, so that you can forge ahead even in a tough time. That's why you look at it. Most of our things have to be imported. We look elsewhere for a solution instead of looking inward to see what we can do for ourselves. I think this is the first time that we have people in a party that is thinking about having solution made inward, not outside Nigeria, or importing everything. Yeah, it's though we know that there's no way a country can exist in isolation. You have to still do business with other country. You have to still get some technologies and all that. But it shouldn't be that you are 100% relying on others. At least let's cut it down to, if not 80%, at least let's say 60, 40%. With that, we can be proud of our own. Our currency can have value. Or if we keep on depending on the other, import goods and services, there's no way our economy can improve. And there's no way we not keep on having issues with our currency, and even we're not going to have respect from other nations, because we are not doing anything to produce or to manufacture things on our own. Yeah, thank you so much. Let me give the mic so that you can continue with the discussion.
Thank you very much, Brother Yemi. Appreciate your comments. You touched on quite a lot of important things that I believe are just very related to the major aspects of the plans that we are trying to articulate here. So, yeah, well appreciated. You talked about how it would be um, sharing the knowledge that we would need in implementing the plan so that we will have a workforce that's knowledgeable about what we're doing and will be in a position to be trained and remain trained, so that it will always put us in a position to have a good supply um, of human workforce that will always be there and also ready to adjust to modern developments or new technology, so that when we have advancement that comes into the society or being used elsewhere in the world, we will be in a position to be able to adapt to it, learn it, and then apply it to um, our development back home. These are vital because it creates and ensures continuity. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be able to be in that position where we have mechanism available that will help us to maintain that sort of a structure. So we have a good pool of knowledge um, to keep things on and retain um, the speed of development in our society. Um, there are a whole lot of ways that we will be doing this, of course. As you know, most of these activities will be all generated uh, through private collaborations and private structure. So these are not something that the government itself will be doing, but the government will be uh, playing a vital role in ensuring that all of the tools and the resources that are needed to ensure that these plans are effectively implemented, that all of them are available uh, for the society to feed on as fuel, to ensure that all of these activities continue as planned. So when we talk about Qatar, we talk about four kind of operation. No, three, right? We talk about knowledge, we talk about extraction, we talk about transformation, and we talked about application. Now, the plan is really to set up um, a mechanism that will concentrate on the extracting knowledge. So these are part of the tools that the government will make available that will make business structure and operation feel conducive enough to work efficiently and effectively. Because it will all be about facilitation, making things easier. We can set goals and objectives, but if achieving them becomes a throat cut back breaking operation, it would not be easy for the people who are charged with that goals of achieving it, because the challenges will be way too much. So this is why facilitation and support instruments are so vital, because of one thing: it encourages and it builds motivation. In any operation where demotivation creeps in, it means that high productivity will be affected. So there will be lower production. So in order to avoid that sort of a situation,
Hello,
we
you
have
mate.
to build in
How are you?
facilitation into implementation. So we have two operative organization, or let's say sections, that will concentrate and ensuring that that pool of resources is available all of the time. So that means that our people will be trained properly, both technically or vocationally. So we've got that continuous pool all of the time. And the two structures that we'll be dealing with there will be the transformation and the application. I will be touching on all of these later on when we start talking about the implementation of this plan, which will rally all around how it's all going to be done, how we're going to move from point A to point B, so that we can ensure that everything rolls in harmony with other instruments of the government. So we will be touching on that later on, and hopefully that will open up a bit more scenario that will help us to understand all of the elements that will be needed in making all of this work, and how they're going to be applied into operationally. So and then you talked about also, of course, how all this is going to help to ensure that the one thing that's been kind of demoralizing our economy, which is, of course, our taste for importing everything, it will help to cut that down, so we don't have to keep depending on other people to live our life. So that's really the bottom line of why all of this is needed. And it's a good thing that we're able to see the kind of effect that that would have on importing goods and services, or depending on other people to provide or produce for us what we need or what we want. So thank you for mentioning those points. So if we just go into looking at how or how much do we expect these to cost. This is, of course, um, not like it's vital, because generating electricity is quite an expensive project. But one real good thing about it is that despite that it costs a lot of money, it's one aspect of government operation that's also bringing in revenue. So if the government or the private sector of the economy spends money to generate electricity, um, that investment will be recruited back by the people who invested in it, be it government or private sector of the economy. So that's one good thing with electricity. So to generate about 100,000 megawatts of electricity in 4 years, we reckon in its totality it will cost something in an average of 44.4 trillion naira. Now, what we've done is we've put into consideration all the various way of generating electricity, from thermal to wind, solar, hydro, everything put together. 44 trillion. It's a huge amount of money. Because if we put into consideration that the last budget for the country was something like 13.5 trillion. I mean, the next budget for 2023 is like 16.3 trillion. So that's still comfortably twice as much as our national budget. But given the fact that this is not something that the government of Nigeria is going to be spending, that pretty much nullifies the huge amount that is needed for this investment, because this is not really a government project. It would not be coming out of our national budget. So that's the point I'm trying to emphasize here. So it's not the government that's doing it. It will be private sector investment. We'll be explaining that later on. So if we are in that situation, it means that the government has still got room to expedite its budget, trying to achieve all of its plans, so that it doesn't have to get choked on the huge amount of money that's required for generating electricity. Now, our calculation is, and the calculation, what we've used is we've taken figures from all of the generating plants that are built in the last 2 years in the world. We use the figure for North America and also Africa, South America, South Africa, and Egypt. So the average cost that we are able to put together to generate all of the required 35,000 megawatts for the thermal generation will be something in the region of 7 trillion naira. That's something like $17 billion. So 7.1 trillion to generate 35,000 watts of megawatts using a combination of thermal, which is oil or coal based, and also what you call a combined cycle turbine. This is when we use gas for combustion. So it is really the cheapest way. We don't have combustion cycle generation in Nigeria at this moment. We mostly use thermal that uses blast furnace, and these are like coal-based generation. Of course, there are other ones that we will use, which will, of course, include electricity, which is this is called induction. It's when you use heating elements, but big, massive heating element, which is usually a cold wire that will create an arc, and that will create the heat that's needed to melt metals. So the average cost of all of these three types, using coal, um, using combustion cycle turbine, and using induction system, average is what we give as 7 trillion for all of the 35,000 megawatts. From our calculation, we reckon that wind turbines generation of 30,000 megawatts of electricity will cost something like 13,000.7 trillion, which is, of course, about 70%, about 80% more than thermal generation. So wind is quite expensive to generate, but the one thing about wind is maintenance cost reduces as soon as they're installed. If you put into consideration what happens with thermal generation, which keeps its working capital for generating electricity, because the raw materials will have to be used every time electricity is generated. So basically, what I'm saying is, in the long run, the higher cost of generating electricity by wind will become lower than the cost of generating electricity using the three thermal sources that we talked about earlier on. But I have to emphasize the fact that the wind generation that we're talking about here now are onshore wind installation. So that means that in the first 4 years, we're not planning on doing any offshore wind turbines installation. These are more expensive. But in Nigeria, say for example in Lagos State, which is very close to the coast, now we don't have to go offshore. No, we stay inshore, but close to the proximity of the coast where wind is most speediest in Lagos, for example. So installation will be mostly onshore for wind turbines or windmills. Now, if we then look at the cost of solar power generation, our target of solar generation is 15,000 megawatts total. We think that that will cost something in the region of 4.5 trillion naira. which equates to about $11 billion. I'm only just giving an equivalent of dollars. It doesn't mean that we're going to borrow dollars. We do not need to borrow no dollar at all. No foreign borrowing. If there are investments, okay, foreign dollars investments, but no dollar borrowing for anything. So 15,000 megawatts will cost us something like 4.5 trillion for solar power generation. And for hydropower, now we expect something like a total of 5,000. I think that we can push it to something like 6.5. There are some rivers and also some dams that we're using at the moment that we believe can be improved on. If we use new turbines, that will help the current dams to even generate more power. Now, the government of Nigeria at the moment have contracted for Mambila to be built at a very, very expensive amount of money. Yeah, 42 billion. I've commented on that before because I thought that was just silly daylight robbery. It won't be finished until 2027, but that amount of money is just staggering. Now, there wouldn't be much that we can do about it because I reckon that the government would have paid that share of the total cost. The Chinese will be financing about 82% of the total amount, and the government of Nigeria we use a consortiums with the banks to raise the rest. And as I said, it's a total robbery. They're like robbery. Um, but if we just ignore the fact that the government is paid that amount of money, right? It means that the dams, all of the dams that we have in Nigeria, will be in a position to provide as much as 5,000 or a little bit more megawatts of electricity. Now, if the government of Nigeria has already committed, right, to all of those dams as well as the Mambila Dam, there's not really point in calculating now how much it will cost in generating them because that commitment is made already. It will all just be about paying and delivering the project by the Chinese. Again, I have to re-emphasize in that if the government of Nigeria is following indications that's given by the international organization that monitors cost of building infrastructure in Africa, it would have been clear to our government that the amount of money that they're paying for Mambila Dam is way too much. But there's really nothing you can do with the government once they've gotten into that contract, which they did without much consultation, really, from
They know, they know, they know, they know. It's just there are back. You know, the way contracts are run in Nigeria is that there are kickback. So that's the
Mm.
problem.
Mm.
They know there will be kickback. So that is why you see incompetent people buying government-owned establishment and all that, because those who are in charge of the awarding of contracts, they are the one behind in those companies. So automatically there is kickback for them. If you watch most of the things that is happening to the current situation of our power discos, we call them discos, you still see
Mm-hmm.
that it is government that is still coming back again to pay them to do certain things for them. You know, there was a time I make the analogy with somebody. I said, take for instance, I run a business where you come to, get something from me, but you are the one that buy a generating set for me. But when I, get you a cold water, I still charge you for the supply of my generating set, you know.
Mm.
So that is what is happening in Nigeria. Government continue to buy transformer for them. As an individual, if you want to connect to electricity, you have to buy your wire, stand your pole, and at the end of the day, when all those things are bought, we said is their property.
Ah.
Yes, that is
So
what
they
we
would
have.
allow you to hook up to the national grid, and once you do that, then it becomes their property.
Yes, because
So are
they
they gonna give? Would they give credit to cover the amount of your investment then for the
no
cost of buying all
no
of those equipment?
no nothing, no nothing, no credit, nothing.
So
Even
they're pretty much robbing people that way.
that is the situation. If you, for instance, okay, I was telling you about a town that had no light. When I even go for inquiry, they said it's pretty 8 years, not just 3 years
Hmm.
now. So those people, if you still, oh, we want this work now, what you need to do is to now say, okay, they cut their supply, the supply from a particular place. So you
Mm.
have to now buy wire and pole that will run the remaining location that you are supposed to join. The place is close to Kogi State, but Kogi has already disconnected them. So if they want to join another place, they have to buy the wire, buy everything, buy pole. So once they have done that, you see, the situation in Nigeria is so bad that when anybody is brought up to negotiate on behalf of government, what they do is to negotiate and said, okay, now I've agreed, you are the one that I will give this contract to. What will be my benefit?
So you cut your own percentage of it,
Yes. And those sometimes it is not just 10% they will require.
and
It
probably
may
not just one
almost,
person.
yes, it goes as far as even that's why you see recently we were hearing about ASU going to strike. If you
Uh-huh.
want to, if you go on, if a worker, let's say a union, a staff, a worker union, go on negotiation with government. When we say government, there are also our people. So those are people that represent government. We now ask you, okay, this your demand for this so money. What do you think we that have come here to negotiate will be our own so that we can facilitate them?
Niger.
So now, what they will now call that, they will now say, okay, we need to lobby. Lobby is in our constitution. You can lobby.
Hmm.
So now, for you to lobby now, you need to dish out some money or percentage, depending on the way you look at it, so that we
Yeah, but
can lobby.
lobbying is not supposed to be about bribing or cutting a percentage of the cost of the project. So we're just taking that lobbying into different territory and doing it
Yes,
our way.
that is the corruption we're talking about.
Mm.
That is the corruption we're talking about. So you see, do you know? Okay, I'm a staff of a university, Federal University, Oye Ekiti here. In this school, the student pay for school fees. On their school fees, they pay for practical equipment, practical materials that will be used for their practical in terms of engineering.
Mm.
The vice chancellor or the school management will not release money for consumables for practicals. And this same management will now say, oh, don't ask any student to do any, to bring any practical material anywhere. Automatically, they are saying, do no practical.
But they charge them. They charge them for it anyways.
Yes, because they know if you said they should bring money, it amounts to exploitation, because they already collected those money, but they did not release it. So the situation we face in this country is such that the whole the whole system, like if we said, oh, like this, when we said about private sector, I was so happy, because if actually it is private investment, no private investor will allow his money sink. You understand? So,
Mm-hmm.
but if it is Nigeria, and the way it is, that is why we look at the government. If you see the way the government is run in such a way that normally the legislatures are supposed to go on oversight function, right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Yeah.
know that, okay, the budget of Mr. President is actually doing what it was budgeted for. But do you know that during budget proposing and approval and all those things, those senators and House of Rep members build in their own budget, which is what they call constituency project.
Mm-hmm.
And those projects, they are going to be the one that will bring contractor that will run those projects. That is why you can see that a rep member will be distributing a grinding machine as an empowerment program.
Yeah. Those.
Some of
Yeah, but
them,
what do they hope to achieve doing that? I mean, they will treat Nigeria like it's one little state.
the problem is the knowledge. We don't have those. Look at when I was in school, I serve as a governor of my hostel. During my time, I did one thing. I attracted about 5 ceiling fans, and all our electrical problem were resolved. Do
Hmm.
you know how I achieved that?
How?
Was this. I wrote a letter telling them that our wires are exposed, and those students, when they connect them together wrongly, because it's exposed, there is no plug on top of every of it, and actually that was the fact.
Hmm.
It was exposed.
Death trap.
That this can electrocute people, and
Mm-hmm.
if it not only just electrocution, that it can even cause
Set the
fire.
whole building on fire. The whole building could go in flame, burn it
When
down.
I itemize those consequences of them not attending
Uh-huh.
to management, to the student affair, immediately the man started acting on it. You understand? Because he knew that this boy that he's dealing with know
Uh-huh.
what he's talking about.
Right. Uh-huh.
You understand? So when I now get back again that I want to go to student union, do you know the same people did not allow me to come up again?
Mm.
Yes, because they knew that this guy, when you come there, you're going to format in trouble for the management. So now what our student union now do, what they are now doing now in unionism in schools, is to sponsor a candidate that will not give the management headache. Have you heard of any student, you know, disturbing management for no power supply, for water and all that again? No,
They bore them.
because they've already, uh, uh, in my I had from my school, Federal Polytechnic, either that now in when we were there, at least we used to have lights because there's no electricity. It's just normal generating set they are using.
Mm.
We used to have light twice, that is during the daytime, twice a week.
Whoa.
You can imagine the situation. And this
Yeah.
is this is a polytechnic that runs sciences and engineering.
Mm.
But right now, there is nothing of such now. So you can understand the kind of decay that is in our system. And this person who is a rector collect budget for fueling generator every month, and he does not utilize them. So we have a real problem on our hand.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things, you see, a lot of these things are just due to lack of good administration. Just exacting basic monitoring and controlling activities in any set objectives. Um, People are not asking, and we
Yeah.
tend to forget that people only do what you expect, not just what you expect. If you give them the chance, they will go ahead and do things just the way they like, which most of the time is not
And the worst
something
part
that's
of
part
it,
of the objective set.
is that when you talk about those things, they go after you and they look at how to assassinate such person.
Mm, mm.
Eh, eh, One of my lecturer gave me an example. He said, you know what he said? He said, the example of situation they are facing presently is like you are in the midst of a hungry people. You brought out chicken, and
And you
and you
think,
start and you start eating it in their presence. And you
oh,
said, if any of you look at me, I'll flog you. You can imagine. You can imagine. He said that is the situation they are facing. That somebody is eating their own, but if you dare talk. So
mm,
we are in a mess, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So there is no monitoring. There is no. There is no check and balance. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
you know. So since there is no check and balance, many people are doing things the way they want to do it. There is lawlessness everywhere. So this is where you see a state will be running both the local government, the House of Assembly. It is in the hand of a governor.
He's in charge of everything.
Everything. So our problem in each state. That was why I said I was so happy. When you is peculiar to each of the states. So that at least if the plan for your state is to generate this, you should now know how to follow up and at least actualize that.
Hmm.
you know so the private sector involvement in your state would be that, oh, if I be able to. And this is an area that once an investor come in and they see that there is a good and there is an enabling environment, that they will recoup their money. It's just very simple. It's just
Hmm.
like when MTN and Global come and all those people. They are private individuals, but now we're all enjoying this network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But government was running Nitel, but they couldn't.
Mm.
You understand? So if they gave room for private sector and give them, not like the one I told you, a kickback system where before I give you contract, I already giving, you
Yeah.
have to give me this percentage. You know, most of the like the sale, the concession agreement they had with all those companies that take over Ajakuta, take over Itakpe, take over Alaja, they were all not companies that can be reckoned with in anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you? Why not? If you are going to take a company in India, Tata is there. Why not consult with Tata? You understand? So we just look at people. We say we do some abracadabra, publish some things on newspaper, and said that's the people bidded, and this is the best bid that you could have. So
And that's it. You just give it away. Yeah, that reminds me of leaders like Obasanjo, you know,
yeah,
and yeah, his son. These all emanates from the way um, the vice president then, Atiku, led the privatization of NEPA. You remember when
yeah,
they broke it into three divisions: the
yeah.
generation,
That is power holding company and all those stuff.
right? So it's that process that actually contributed to the position that all of those people invested in, say, the distribution uh, um, part of the operation, that the discos, the problem that they're facing now. Uh, because the privatization was done in a way that it left those people shortchanged. And then what they did was to use their position where they believe was unfair, capitalize on that, and further rob the state. You know, so it's all right to complain that you're put in a bad position, but it's another thing if you try to use that position to exploit other people further yourself. And that's what I believe.
You see, this
Exactly
is a
with disco.
yeah, this is a country where politicians will say, they are building this business for government. Once the business is finished, they said, the business is not working. We want to sell it. They will now sell that same business below the invested price. Then the same people will go behind again and buy it over. You see people, they will say, oh, we're buying cars for government use. After some time, they say this car is no longer good again. We're auctioning it out. The same people will go behind again and got the auctions. So,
Yeah. The electricity the other way around. I guess it's probably because Atiku and his team, they didn't want to go that far as to selling it cheap then rebuying it. So they basically just rob those people who they sell it to. You know, they overprice uh, uh, um, the privatization so that the disco guys now who paid so much money for it, when they get there, they realize that, okay, there are uh, no resources to make them work properly. then they run out of money to actually buy all of the gadgets that they need, including supply of meters and supply of all the electronic components that are used in installation of meters, and bringing in cables from substations and everything. They just messed everything up. Yeah. And because of all those guys, they're not doing it like, I mean,
Yeah,
for the sake of just doing a good business, a fair, viable business. A lot of them have the impression to exploit the situation themselves anyway.
yes, that's all.
So that just everything
That's the
adds up
fact.
what's in the situation. Yeah. So yes, it's very sad. Can you imagine that for over they've been trying to mate Nigeria now since um,
So yeah,
Jonathan's uh, Jonathan's um, Jonathan's time, right? Since
yeah,
no, that's not right. Since Obasanjo's time, because that's when disco was created.
yes. Since
And right
Obasanjo's time.
through Obasanjo's time, onto Jonathan's time, then Buhari's time, Nigeria is still
It's
not mated.
the situation is still continue because Buhari does not really want to change anything, you know.
He
So
can't. He don't know how to do it no more.
so
If you look at all of the governments before him, they all face the same thing. They get stuck because when they get there, this is something different. And because they're not really well prepared, they get pushed here, pushed there. Eventually, they make wrong decisions. And then we're back to square one. I think most of the problem is just due to the fact that we don't really have a good analysis of what our problem is. And then the
yeah,
solutions are not strong enough to deal with it. And
yeah.
then when they get there, they get frustrated because they can't get resolved. And when you get there, you have people telling you, yeah, do it this way, do it that way. But because you don't have a solution for yourself, you get torn apart. You know, people are pulling you here, no, it's this way, you should that way. That's what happened when you come in with that aware thought out strategies and policies that are really going to address those problems.
You see,
So that's
yeah.
that's part of the problems that brought us here, really.
I think that, like just what you said, during Goodlaw, we look at they said the local content act. You know, they sign on those local content act in a way to help build local technical persons that will be able to, you know, help us develop. But all the same, the things doesn't work. It doesn't work because they lack the knowledge to make those things work. You know, when you look at the local content bill, when I look at it, it was a very brilliant work they've done and all that. But when it comes to implementation, the only thing you see they do, allowing the real people to take over the opportunity. No, you are going to recruit based on politics, based on family, or based on ethnicity. So those conditions on ground will make things not work well. You know, let's be open. This is the solution. This is what we want. Once you have a good leader is just to give a direction, you know, strictly to those direction that you what you want to achieve.
Yes, that's right.
So, so once you see that there is anybody derailing from your the direction you've set, I ask myself, you know, that right about now, I don't know if you know it. Maybe it's because I'm not opportune to know that. What is the vision of Nigeria presently? I can't really figure it out. What vision do we have? I don't know if you know the vision of Nigeria currently.
It's a good question. I think people talk about it all the time. That's why they say both of the leading political parties that we have now, where all of our leaders, majority of our leaders come from, they have no ideology to say this is exactly what we want to do, and these are the plans to achieve them specifically. So they have no ideology. So it becomes very difficult to have a solution for the problems. You
You
know,
know, during Yaradua, we could realize that he came up. Though Obasanjo started it, but he came up. He signed people into following Vision 2020. If we remember,
that's
it
true.
came with it came with 7 point agenda and also Vision 2020. So all those things. After that, when Goodluck came in, he turned the 7 point agenda to transformation agenda, okay, which is basically still has something that is pursuing. At least you can ask them, hold them accountable for, okay, you are supposed to do this, you are not supposed to do this. For this present administration, I haven't seen any vision that the man is pushing, you know. So all he's doing is,
How
okay,
about
we want to kill
how about this?
corruption.
How about the second? What's it called again? The
The
second stage? No, that's not the word. The second. Um.
Are you talking about this present administration?
Yeah. What's they use a word to indicate that this is the second
No,
phase.
next level is the next
Next
level.
level. That's it. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Next level. Yeah.
It's quite ambiguous, with the change, the first change was not defined, and the second next level how can it be defined?
that
To some extent, if we can say the change they are talking about was the change of administration, but the second one talking about next level, you know, I really can't figure it out. You know,
hmm. Yeah, I don't see any next level really. I mean, no. I
I,
mean,
I,
'cause
I thought
everything
I'm
is
the only
fixed
one that
now.
was lost.
Yeah, the most ambitious thing was electricity, and they will come and argue that they've got installed capacity of 13,000, but they've got a working capacity of 3,000. I mean, how do you explain that?
the,
I mean, that's
the,
like 3 out of 13.
you see,
I mean, there's got to be some monster in the cables that's eating up the generation power.
the problem is our people are full of lies.
Mm.
They speak no truth. You know, the statistics they give out, okay, if you go to Bureau of Statistics today, we'll be telling you that the inflation level is coming down, where we know that the
It's going up.
inflation is increasing.
Yeah, even in the Western world, inflation is increasing. Yeah, the supply chain is all disrupted. So, I mean, how can that be when our supply chain source have inflation increasing, and we that are dependent on everything they make have a reduced inflation rate? That's just not possible.
If without even saying, okay, because we are dependent in all imputation, currently the value of the dollar is increasing. So if value of dollar is increasing, automatically we have no choice than to have inflation.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
how
That
how
is
can
just.
how can a statistician in our
But
country tell us that?
they want to hide it behind the way inflation is calculated. Usually you will use a price index for certain selected goods. And in that calculation, prices of foods and um, agricultural produce are not included, right? Because they are supposed to be, yeah, a little bit too volatile to be controlled, and they have other factors that influence them. So those they would like to identify and then isolate those factors, but you can't do that because our economy is majorly a Greek economy just based on food production. These indices are what the Western world can use because they have not just uh, agricultural economy, they have a manufacturing economy that also produces. They have service industries that contribute massively to the revenue of the government. So the indices that we're using are not really, yeah, good reflection of our economic structure, and also, yeah, the sort of economic activities that we have. So they need to be adjusted to suit what we have on the ground. We don't have to follow everything that the Western world defined for us. We need to be able to localize things and see what they actually apply to what's happening on our soil that suits the way we're doing things. Otherwise, it would just end up giving us wrong indication of what's going on because the right variables are not put into the calculation.
Yeah.
So that's another problem that we face in calculating the true rate of inflation, and that goes for the rate of unemployment as well,
Yes. Yes.
because
You
they will be
see,
factoring the part of the economy, right, that's not really productive enough to be brought in calculating rate of unemployment. Yeah, and then for the rate of employment itself, they'll be using, yeah, I mean, employment indices that doesn't apply to this part of Africa. Our Africa, yeah, where you put
yeah.
into consideration the kind of industries, well, that employs us. So there are quite a lot of things that we're using as statistics that are not giving us a real reflection of our activities. So they're not really helping in a way because they don't give us a real indication. And if they don't, it means that our plans will not or cannot be
Yes.
adopted if we really want good result. We need to look into those things again, right, and really see if they really, this is where, these are the kind of statistics that we need to be using. So a lot of work needs to be done, right, on collection of data, uh, uh, um, uh, extracting and tabulating them into usable format, and then can be used. But right now, I think we're leading ourselves astray by using wrong statistics.
Yes. You see, if you even like what you said, if you look at our academic feeds, we believe so much on for international papers, Coopers. People don't look at those Coopers are not looking for you to even publish in Coopers. You need to have dollars.
Mm.
So, and most of those people, we are not, they are not looking at, they are not judging their people based on what we have. Every Nigerian university has its own journal. Why not look at those journals to promote your people.
mm,
And also, though our research are not done based on what will I call it? We don't do our research based on what we have on ground. I understand there are some research that cannot be conducted based on due to machine and all that, but there are some things that is just statistical research that should be conducted, going to the field, getting real data, you know. So we so much trained to depend on foreign things. You know, if somebody is wearing a wristwatch now and he said is Italian wristwatch, everybody honors that. Yes, this is a good quality wristwatch. But if the person is wearing another, you say, ah, this is Abba made. And Miss Abba made wristwatch is an inferior wristwatch. So those are the mentality that we have.
mm.
You
That's
understand?
yeah,
So
yeah.
one things are made in Nigeria, people look at it as inferior things.
Mm.
Whereas there are things like, okay, we have agricultural, we make use of farm implements. There are little things, if you watch YouTube, that those people are producing, Chinese people are producing so many little implements that is not even high capital to produce. All we just need is fabrication. Once you are able to fabricate those things, you can make use of them in your farm, and it makes work more easier than local ways of making ridges and heaps.
Yeah.
Yet
I
we
mean,
don't
people are
patronize
using
it.
animals to pull the land, plow the land, and all those things. Just like what you said, simple
Simple
technical
tools.
tools. No, that we can use. But no, we don't want to do that. I
So,
can't
but
just understand that kind of mentality. How many professors of history do we have in Nigeria? And it will be difficult for us to put a few good history
yeah,
how we exist together.
rather we go to, if you want to study, if you want to study Nigerian history, you have to go to UK.
Yeah, white man has to tell us our history.
After all, they discovered River Niger.
Yeah,
So
just
which means
he was
which
he
means
was hiding until the white man come.
so we never had River Niger until white man came.
Yeah, it was hiding. Didn't want to show up. It was only when the white man came that it showed up. And like, here I am,
It's,
this River Niger.
see, there are so many things wrong about our belief system. You know, we have a lot to way to go, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. So I think what we can do now is we can just round off because we're running to 3 hours. Yeah. We actually planned for 2 hours as usual, but
Yeah, we tried that.
we just go ahead. We will round this up.
Okay.
Um, Now we talked about um, hydropower last. So the last one that we need to talk about really is generating power using coal, which is of course another form of thermal. Um, this is a power generation source that we're pretty familiar with. Um, because we have a lot of our power stations in Nigeria using this um, kind of power generation. Um, Now, coal is not a clean source of power generation, but of course, using a reformed form of charcoal, coal, which is coke, that is used uh, in melting iron ore is used in the same way to generate electricity. Now, using the same structure but using coke, it can be used to generate electricity, and the plan is to generate about 15,000 megawatts of it. Yeah. The estimated cost of that will be something like 15 trillion. But as I said, there are a couple of ways to clean up coal to reduce its level of the level of toxic byproducts, right? So basically, when coal is burned, the kind of gas that escapes is very toxic, but the coal itself can be cleaned up before it's being used. The latest technology that the Western world are using now, well, the Americans are using, the Chinese are using it as well. These are the major countries that are using coal to generate electricity. They're cleaning the coal up by using limestone. They call it washing. Now they wash it, and that pretty much reduces the carbon content of the coal. And when it's finished, when they finish cleaning it up, that of course reduces the size of the coal itself to almost about 75%. So about a quarter of it is wasted in cleaning it. Now, coal can be cleaned where they're actually deposited before they were actually mined out. So it will pretty much amount to cleaning it and burying the carbon content in the ground where it's mined before it's been brought up. So that will make it a little bit cleaner when it's brought up. And also there are technology now that can actually capture the residue of the toxic fumes and gases that comes out by capturing the gases before they escape into the atmosphere, and then cleaning them up, or carbon can be infused into them, or they're infused into carbons and then buried. So that way it is ensured that the toxic fume is not allowed to escape into the atmosphere and people suffering from its toxication or from its all of the gases that it released when it's actually being burned. Now, so that will be the challenge that we will need to solve. How quickly can we build recycling mechanism into that operation that will allow us to eventually reduce the amount of toxins that are released into the atmosphere? Our challenge will be to bring it to the minimum. And from our calculation, it's possible for us to clean it in the ground before it's actually been mined out. And also the technology to use other materials like limestone to collect the toxin and then bury them or keep them somewhere where they will be safe in the ground until there is a proper technology to use the carbon um, that are stored for something else. So this is the one way to deal with the negative aspect of using coal to generate electricity. So that pretty much concludes all of the 5 different sources of generating electricity according to our plans. We've looked at the costs that will be expected to cover all of these operations. 44 trillion, well, 44, almost 44.5 trillion. It's something that we're expecting will bring us about 100,000 megawatts of electricity. We've also touched on where we expect these money to come from, which will, of course, be a combination of private sector investment. The strategy for that, we'll be explaining that later. So, by the look of things, we still have 1 or 2 sessions to do so before we can bring this plan for electricity to a conclusive end and then move on to another one. Now, so we've established where we are now and what we will be dealing with at the next session. So we're pretty much in a good place now to bring this to an end tonight and then continue with the rest of it accordingly.
Yes, yes.
Now, I'd like to thank the whole house. Grateful to you, Brother Yemi, for your support and contribution.
Thank you, sir.
And I look forward to having you again at the next session that will take us a little bit further into articulating what these plans are, the what and hows, and also we will be looking into the post electricity generations, which will just pretty much give us an idea into the rate at which all of these power stations will be built. Because, of course, we all know that when you generate electricity, if it's not consumed, it would be wasted unless we have facilities that we can use to save them and use them later, which would be things like batteries. We will also touch on those later on, and so which will then, of course, give us an idea of our generation management, how we're going to be managing the generation. So it will be like, it will, because it wouldn't make sense to generate a lot of electricity and it's not being consumed by our economic activities. So the idea would be to measure, right, the economic activities and then explorate that into the nearest future, which would then give us an idea of the level of power generation that is expected so that we don't waste too much generation of electricity. That will not be good for business. So we'll also be touching on that next time. And then hopefully we'll be to wrap this up in two sessions, if not one session. So once again, brother Yemi, do you want to throw anything in before we put an end to the room tonight?
Yeah, well, it's okay. I really appreciate you today, since you've given us a lot of enlightenment and indicators on ways that our problem can be solved. So we appreciate your time and hope you still meet up to come so that we can discuss more on this. Thank you so much.
Now, on that note, thank you, brother Yemi.
Yeah.
And the
All
room,
right.
we will now bring the room to a
To
close.
close.
So, have a good evening, everyone.